Hey, this is Steven Scarborough, your friend in wrestling, and this is Platinum versus AEW Dynamite from their June 17th, 2020 show. I'm going to break my usual protocol, not that it matters that much. I can do what I like. You can listen how you like. But because I feel like what I have to say about the eighth match, which was the main event between Les Sex Gods, Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara, against the Best Friends. I think that is the most important thing that I have to offer. So I'm going to start with that. I know that sounds very strange, but I know there's people who listen to these and they don't always listen to the end. And I really feel like what I have to say about that eighth match, the main event, is the most important thing. So I'm going to start with that and then I'm going to go to the beginning. So Les Sex Gods, Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara. They come out, they do their entrance, Sammy doing the bit where he's singing Chris Jericho's song. Man, it was really cool when Sammy did it the first time. It was really funny when he did it another time. At this point, doing it feels kind of dated. It feels like it's taking away from the seriousness of the match. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but yeah. So they're coming to the ring and we go to commercial. And then we come back and the Best Friends, by the way, the Best Friends are the number one contenders to the tag team titles, which this show were defended successfully by Kenny Omega and Adam Page, the Hangman. So they're going to face each other unless Les Sex Gods can win this match. So the number one contendership is up for grabs. Why would the number one contendership be up for grabs? Because Chris Jericho and company attacked Orange Cassidy, friend of the Best Friends, last week, busted him open, hit him with a bag of oranges. And so the Best Friends, in order to get this match, put their number one contendership on the line. I like it. It's all stuff that makes sense in a wrestling context. And the Best Friends respond incredibly appropriately by attacking right away Les Sex Gods, which I really liked. Match goes on and on and on. Then we get to a commercial again, split screen. It's a main event, so they split screen it. I like that a lot. I like that AEW does that. But here's where it gets ugly for me to talk about this part, because the nuts and bolts of the match are less important than the story that takes place and also what we can learn. And here's the part that we can learn. I'll just be blunt, and for fear of sounding like your typical wrestling fan, Chris Jericho looks like shit. He looks terrible. He looks like he's put on 15 to 20 pounds in the last month or two. And more than that, his performance here was incredibly lackluster. It's just phoning it in, not caring stuff. There was never a clean bump taken. It was all like if he got thrown out of the ring, it was just roll around, land on my feet stuff. And even at the end where he was taking the bump for Orange Cassidy, it was this kind of rolling fall on the outside. It's the kind of thing I would expect a manager to take. He really wasn't there. His energy level was incredibly low. And again, Chris Jericho is so important, right? A year ago, there was this real big push of calling him the greatest of all time. And he's got the moniker of Le Champion, even though he is not the champion. And it's pretty much acknowledged that Chris Jericho should have been, could have been, and was the first champion of AEW and did a stellar job. But now it just, and again, there's a million reasons perhaps, and I don't know them all, perhaps. Coronavirus has happened, and Chris Jericho's put on weight. And on one level you say, well, it's not that big of a deal, and Chris Jericho has sort of brushed off the critiques that have happened before about his weight by saying, implying I'm a heel and, my shtick is but this is beyond, this is like in the realm of laziness. We often decry, and we should decry WCW because the guys at the top of the card, used injuries as excuses or made up injuries or exaggerated them and basically took their guaranteed money and fucked that company over. And, it's like the beginning of Casino, where it's just like, we'll never get anything like street guys like us. We're going to never be given anything that valuable again because they fucked it up. There's a lot of people at WCW who fucked it up. And Chris Jericho is one of those guys at WCW who was on the undercard, who was bumping right up against that glass ceiling because of a bunch of guys who were taking advantage of a system and fucking it over. And I looked at this thing with Chris Jericho, and I'm not going to exaggerate its importance, except to say Chris Jericho is clearly one of the top paid guys there, making a great deal of money. And he's got a great deal of adulation, and he's done his part for AEW in the beginning, but he was, I think, fairly compensated. And more than that, put on this thing to be an inspiration for the company and the other wrestlers, and he's letting them the fuck down, and it was disheartening to watch. And so Sammy Guevara, who's already the workhorse and already a guy that people respect, especially the boys, I think, inside and outside AEW, just as a guy who's on the hustle and he's got his social media going and all this stuff, and Jericho just appears to get lazier and lazier. And his physical appearance was shocking. And the person who benefited from it, if anybody did, was Chuck Taylor, because Chuck Taylor also looks like shit. Now, he's never been a body guy, but he clearly has looked like shit too. And thank God for Trent and Sammy. And I remember feeling distinctive relief when the two of them were paired off in this match near the end. I was like, thank goodness. I was texting back and forth with friends, all of us who talk about wrestling, care about wrestling. And I was on a rant, and I'm like, thank God Trent's paired up with Sammy here. Because Chuck missed fucking Sammy's dive, by the way, when he went outside of the ring. Now, I'm not going to say that it's because Chuck is lazy or he's out of shape or whatever. He certainly appears to be so. And with the rash of injuries they've had in AEW, can we really afford to miss a fucking dive? For all of the knocks that Cody Rhodes gets, and I think most of them are completely unwarranted, nobody can deny that that guy's putting in the fucking work, both outside of the ring and inside of the ring. Jericho, by his physical appearance and his work or lack thereof, even the stuff with Tyson, there was something that was sort of badly executed about it. And he's a guy that went from conversations of he's the greatest of all time to a guy who's phoning it in and still part of these big angles. Now I feel like, God, is Chris Jericho just working them for money? Has he become the guy that he hated 20 plus years ago? I hope that isn't true. And when people message me privately, I know they're going to be saying all kinds of stuff and accusing me of just saying this stuff to be inflammatory in order to get attention, or who am I to say it? I'll just say this. I've trained wrestlers. I've been around wrestlers. I've been a wrestler. I've done all kinds of things in the wrestling business. I continue to advise people. And fuck, dude. Like, the reason I follow AEW, I'm going to rewind just a little bit. I didn't give a shit about watching any national level product. I did not watch WWE, and I did not watch AEW. And almost pridefully and proudly so, because I just wasn't interested. But then I went to an MLW show because Logan Creed was going to be on the show. And I got excited because MLW was clearly a company that was trying to do more. And I said to myself, if MLW is trying to do more, let me look at AEW, because I certainly hear about it. I have friends that were very into it. I have friends that it's like AEW or die. They don't watch anything else. and I watched it. And, I had heard all the stuff about, oh, like Orange Cassidy, it's terrible for the business, and they do so many goofy things, and it's the stuff that Cornette and others say, right? And I did see a lot of those elements there, but then I decided to just be open-minded and let me give it a chance. And then coronavirus hit, and there was no local wrestling in Georgia or Florida to really talk about. So I'm like, I want to stay relevant, and I want Georgia wrestling history to stay relevant. So forget that. I'm gonna look at the national shows. Now, Raw is a slog for me. It's an incredibly difficult thing to watch, and it's 3 hours out of my fucking life. But I watch it because it is the flagship show in our industry. And SmackDown, I just refuse to watch. And for a while, I would do Dynamite and switch back and forth with NXT. But out of the two, I preferred AEW. Now, the wrestling at NXT is stellar. I will not deny that. But there's something about that show that's incredibly sterile and isn't contributing. And it really does feel like the WWE's B show. And if I don't watch SmackDown, why would I watch NXT when I can watch a company that's vibrant? AEW is incredibly vibrant to me. I think Dark has gotten better and better and better and is now a show that I look forward to watching. And I can't believe I'm saying that. And it's not just because there's a bunch of people I know who are on it who have a chance of getting signed. That is part of it. And I think they're an integral part of the wrestling business. I think AEW is contributing in a way that the WWE does not and refuses to, frankly. And it's a show that I could watch the progress of, meaning AEW, both Dynamite and Dark. I can watch AEW and see marked improvements and feel like my voice is being heard to an extent. And so I just got to say, Chris Jericho, get your shit together, and Chuck Taylor, get your shit together, because it just feels like Chris Jericho is taking advantage of them instead of being one of the people that's leading them. And for Chuck Taylor, his partner is fucking working his ass off. And when Trent got here, let's get back to the match. When Trent got in there with Sammy, that's when they did the great shit. And Chuck even coming over for his part in the Tower of Doom spot, he just seemed out of it. Right? And again, this might be me reading stuff into this. I will allow that. I will allow that my subjective judgments that Chris Jericho and Chuck Taylor weren't holding up their end are subjective judgments. I will say that Chuck did miss Sammy's fucking dive. Those things happen. I understand that. I was a wrestler. I trained wrestlers. I ran shows. I understand those things happen. But boy, him looking like shit doesn't help. And Chris Jericho looking like dog shit does not fucking help. And it doesn't help their cause. And I would imagine that people at the WWE are laughing at that shit. Now, there are other things at AEW that people from the outside critique. Let's take Marco Stunt for an example. But Marco Stunt, I believe, is slowly changing that rep by wrestling the matches he wants. But more than that, that guy fucking works hard. His performance, he works hard. And Chris Jericho is not working hard. He is not inspirational, and he's not leading that group like he should. Cody Rhodes is. I believe the Bucks are. I just want to see show not tell out of certain people at AEW. I think it's vital. I think Chris Jericho has done a lot of posturing, sort of well, once I wrestle Adam Page, I'm going to make him. I like this kind of overt saying of things. Again, and this is the kind of thing you would have heard in WCW from those top guy assholes. I just feel like Chris Jericho is at odds with what AEW is doing. And I think people are afraid to say it. And they don't have an adult in the room that's going to say it. Well, I'll fucking say it, whatever it's worth. This match epitomized it, right? And then Orange Cassidy comes out, and he's the cameraman in disguise, which is real. By the way, Trent pinning Sammy, they went back and forth. And again, it's two guys at the top of their game who you really do believe are part of the two of the top tag teams that are really trying to compete and win something. And Trent pins Sammy, and it's fucking great. And then Orange Cassidy comes out as the cameraman, bumps Jericho. I guess you call that a bump. I call that Jericho sort of rolling out of the ring and then sort of going down to the concrete floor. And I mean, good for the best friends, good for Orange Cassidy, but really good for Trent. I'll say this, that guy made me a fucking fan, and in a big, huge way. And Sammy Guevara, I already thought the world of. It's a guy that if you ever wanted to critique Sammy Guevara for something, it's that he does too much and tries too hard. But it's in the service of wanting to be great and wanting AEW to be great. I just think Chris Jericho fucking owes AEW. And some would say, no, he's paid his dues. This is all the mantras and the bullshit that people who are coasting by say. Chris Jericho needs to fucking work out. You guys have fucking very few jobs when it comes to this. You're getting paid a great deal of fucking money. Dedicate yourself to the fucking thing and be worthy of the adulation and the money that you're getting. I don't think it's too much to ask. Clearly, AEW is... How much money do they spend on a typical fucking dark show, which is a YouTube thing that, they'll get 200,000 people watching. So how much does that translate to money-wise? Maybe like $600. They lose tons of money on those dark tapings in an effort to include a whole bunch of wrestling people in there, indie guys, and have them come in and job and possibly get a job at the low levels of AEW. I mean, it's so great and it's so lovely. And Tony Khan, again, when WCW ended, and that quote from Casino was so true. It's like, we're street guys are never going to get a thing like this to run again because we fucked it all up in WCW. But they're getting that shot now. In AEW, they're getting this playground, and they're making it work slowly. But fuck, they gotta get on the same page. Like, I think just in general, as a general note, I think wrestling fans and wrestling people will allow for mistakes to be made, which AEW continues to make, and everybody makes. I mean, WWE makes them on a scale that's like jaw-dropping. They don't give a fuck about the editing. They don't give a fuck about anything. That's clear. AEW tightens up things when they see that they're wrong, but they're not having a conversation with the guy that they need on board the most, and that's Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho has a chance to do something in wrestling that hasn't been done, which is... He's already gone over to the side of, well, what the fuck ever, I'm just here for a check. And he can humble himself, make himself great again, and AEW by proxy gets another feel-good story. I hope he does it. And I hope Chuck Taylor realizes that he's in a great spot, and he's got a great partner, and he's part of a hot thing because Orange Cassidy's involved. And that all he's got to do is the very best that he can. Outside of the ring as well as in. All right. Let's go over this show. We have a mention of, before the show opens, about Fyter Fest. It's going to be July 1st and 8th, I believe. So it's coming up. And they've already promoted the shit out of this, man. And I love this about AEW. Raw, they never tell you what the fucking matches are at the top of the show. It's almost like they're making up this show as they're going along. What does that sound like? That sounds like WCW during the fucking fall, right? But in AEW... they're talking about that, and then they're talking about how, like, the tag team championships are on the line. Then they open Dynamite with that great video and the little song. Their crowd has fun. The baby faces, when they're panning around, the heels are doing their thing. But the baby faces, they do the thing where they're like, the like synchronized swimming look where they're like all fanning before the camera. Like, AEW's fucking fun. WWE is forced fun, right? You know, AEW's having fucking fun, and it's magnetic, and their opening is colorful. They deliberately have splashes of color all over the place, and it's a great look. And you know how they advertise that the tag team titles are going to be online? That's our first match. In fact, in this 2-hour show, they did 8 matches, only one of which I would categorize as squash. Right? Raw did less than 8 matches on their 3-hour shit show, and at least 2 or 3 of those were squashes. And almost all of them were my favorite stipulation in wrestling, the foregone conclusion match. Whereas this one, shit was up in the air. We go into that opening match for the tag team championships. And let me say this, like Kenny Omega catches a lot of shit because people are saying, oh, he's not, he's not as great as he once was. But I'll say this, he fucking looks like Dynamite. He fucking looks awesome. He fucking wrestles a great match. Maybe he does too much. Like when he wrestled Alan Angels and gave Alan Angels a lot. And people were like, what the fuck is that? You're supposed to be a top guy. Alan Angels got a deal with AEW. Like, these guys fucking care. It's clear. And Kenny Omega, no one can accuse him of phoning anything in. And if anything else, having him and Paige be the tag champs puts them on enough of a back burner so you're not like, why aren't they contending for the titles? Blah, blah, blah. That stuff's going to come later, but for now it's a great role, them as tag team. And they didn't split them up, and I'm glad they didn't. And they're going against the Natural Nightmares, who have their own dramas. They've got their own thing going. Allie's not at ringside. Cool. All of these, they put over AEW Dark. Their shows work in lockstep with each other. They're not just infomercials for each other, but they actually work in lockstep, a little bit as they would say in the corporate world, synergy, right? AEW, they wrestle a more freewheeling style, which I like, but there's a price to be paid. And, we see Dustin get hit in the head with knees. But they don't shy away from that stuff. They emphasize it. Adam Page and QT have good chemistry. QT is an example, right? Like, he's a guy who was at the bottom of the card and not very important, and they managed to make him important. And then even in defeat, they make him look great here. How he's like scrapping and fighting, and the Alley does come out, and she's cheering him on, and Brandy puts over a good little bit of acting of like, I told this bitch not to be out here. Like, she conveyed it all in her face. I told this bitch not be out here, but she's doing the right thing, so I'm going to just try to be supportive. I'm trying to make this thing work. I love it. I mean, it's just a little bit of nuance and a little bit of subtlety. It's certainly, I don't see this on fucking Raw ever, except from perhaps MVP. I think MVP does a really good job on that show. Regardless, eventually QT succumbs and gets pinned. Really good. That's the open of our show. Just fucking knockdown, drag out, barn burner of a show. So we also announced there's going to be a TNT title match. I guess it's not going to be the main event, which is good. It's a change of pace. I like it. But Cody's continuing to defend his TNT title on every show as promised. Yeah. Billy versus MJF. We got the Super Bad Squad. I'm big fans of them. Jimmy Havoc and Kip Sabian with Penelope Ford against the Young Bucks. And then the Best Friends against the Sex Gods. Those are all announced. And then Anna Jay is going to be in action. And I would assume that means when we come back from commercial that Anna Jay is going to wrestle. And true to form, they are. But they have a little profile of Anna Jay. How she wants to be an entertainer. How that's why she calls herself star of the show, etc., etc. Anna Jay, one of their recent signings. Obviously good looking. And now they've put her over. So the expectation is, okay, she's going to have this barn burner of a match. Instead, they bring out Abaddon, who's got the coolest entrance in wrestling going. It's definitely that frickin', Japanese horror movie vibe. She's crawling to the ring. The commentators are putting it over appropriately. She's frickin' scared as shit. They're scrolling the matches from AEW Dark results on the bottom. I love it. I see you, AEW. I see you. I see the improvements. I see the synergy you're creating between your shows. I see you. Abaddon crushes Anna Jay. Anna Jay, to her credit, does the right thing. If you're going to put somebody over, give them everything. Push all the chips on the table and give them everything. That's her job here, is to put on Abaddon. So she acts scared of her from the beginning, but not in a comically like eek a mouse kind of way, but in a genuine concern on her face, like, what the fuck am I about to do? And the commentators note it and point it out as well. What have I gotten myself into, right? Abaddon destroys her and wins with a very simple move that I like a lot, that Hurricane Rana driver thing, when the person's on their knees and they do the Hurricane Rana, so it slams their head in and she pins. And she just looks scary as shit. They give her a little camera trickery thing to like she's phasing in and out of our world. I loved it. Loved it. Great. Made an instant star. Because the women in AEW have been getting injured and dropping like flies. Like, we got Statlander's out and Britt Baker's out. And, you know, so they're bringing other people up. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Great stuff. And they made a star to Abaddon, or certainly somebody very interesting. You know? Small things that I like. The Dark Order comes out, and they present some kind of paperwork to Colt Cabana, who acts surprised. While they're presenting this paperwork, the Dark Order tag team, like the main tag team, Evil Uno and such, they talk trash with Private Party. And AEW's been doing this a lot lately, where a seemingly like side confrontation ends up leading to a match. And for some people, this is not a big deal, but it's because we've lost sight of the fact that continuity and connecting things and the connecting tissue matters. WWE has abandoned this notion completely, but AEW has done it. And you know what that is? That's a distinctly old school vibe. But it's not just old school, it's just good storytelling. I love that they do that small stuff. That's why I pointed out. That's why I don't usually talk about the nuts and bolts of a match. Who fucking cares? And you can go to a million people to get the nuts and bolts of a fucking wrestling match in a move by move. Like, I looked at the AEW Dark thing. By the way, I was covering AEW Dark before anybody fucking else. But, you know, they'll break down like, oh, and then Griff Garrison did this arm lock. And they're like, who fucking cares? It's about who's getting put over, who's really getting put over, what are the things that they're doing that are effective. Like, that's the shit that matters. That's what I talk about. I could give a flying fuck who's doing a Tiger Driver 91. Like, who gives a fuck, right? Anyway, and then the Dark Order, after giving that contract to Colt Cabana, and the Dark Order tag team has their little run-in with Private Party, they help Anna Jay out of the ring. I was thinking to myself, when are they going to put a woman in the Dark Order, or are they? And the answer is perhaps they will. We go to commercial. We come back. Sometimes I don't know what I'm saying in my notes, and that's a shame. We got a match. We got MJF. And see, if we're going to a third match, we're fucking red hot already. Raw did 3 matches in an hour and a half. We're in the first 30 minutes, and we're in our third match. You got 3 matches in the first half hour, 2 of which were significant. MJF with Wardlow versus Billy with his 2 sons, Cotton and Austin, I believe. Then we go to commercial, but they're split screening it as they're wrestling, which gives an additional importance to MJF. So MJF continues to work on Billy's leg. Yeah. They didn't shy away from the fact that Billy is bigger than MJF and throws him around a little bit in the beginning. They have a good match, and then it's very old school in its feel. Wardlow takes the ref, gets the ring in there. MJF puts on the ring, knocks Billy out, pins him. Then Jungle Boy confronts MJF when MJF goes out of the ring because he's in the crowd. And again, a nice bit of continuity. They had a match, and Jungle Boy keeps pointing out, I saw you hit him with the ring. I saw you, like, again, small stuff, but it's really great. Wardlow and Luchasaurus, which they've been teasing for a fucking month, as I pointed out again and again and again, get into it physically and have to be separated. I'm like, awesome, we're going to have a Wardlow Luchasaurus match next week. As I wrote down in my notes, I know that's going to happen, and I'm excited about that. I think it's great. An interview with Alex Marvez. They always give Alex Marvez like one spot, and I always think that that's so cool. And it's with the Les Sex Gods. And there was nothing about that interview that was particularly great. Like, Jericho's not even trying to be particularly great, even in a promo. Which is like, what the fuck? Tony Schiavone is interviewing Britt Baker, who they have this kind of weird friendship pseudo thing. And we talk about that it's going to be Hikaru versus the champion versus Penelope Ford at Fyter Fest. And so Britt Baker's there in the back, and she's whining and complaining, and it's not really going anywhere. And I wrote, I hope this goes somewhere. It does. Big Swole's driving that cart and drives off with Britt Baker. Oh, God. Dumb shit. Let's see how they pay that off later. I will note at this point that Cody Rhodes, I'm part of that text group where you could text that he's coming up next. And I think to myself, and I write down, like, that's pretty awesome if he's wrestling next. Sure enough, he comes to the ring with Arn. We go to commercial. We come back. Arn's cutting a promo about, like, how Cody's going to take on Hager at Fyter Fest, but that he got him a great match. And then we have a little vignette, a little promo thing about Absolute Ricky Starks, who's a guy that I'm familiar with, indie guy. And he talks about how he's going to take this opportunity. Again, I just thought really, really cool. We're not denying the fact that Cody's going to win this match, but we're making it purposeful. Arn picked this guy to make sure Cody stays in good shape for Hager. Ricky Spears and Cody have a great match. And again, they point out, like somebody points out, like Cody shouldn't be doing like a risky, high risk maneuver. JR points it out, but it works in the context of the commentary, and it also emphasizes my continuing point of Cody's working his ass off. You can say that he's doing too much, but you can't say that he's doing too little. Jericho. Arn pushing Cody out of the way when his neck was like on the second rope and it looked like Ricky Spears was going to hit him in the back to like, you know, that spot. And Arn pushed him out of the way. It's interesting because Arn continues to do little things, which is good because it's in his like quote unquote character, right? Like, I mean, he's a heel and he's a four horseman and he's always a help my guy out thing. And I wonder if that's something that's going to pay off later in some way, shape, or form. It's interesting. Cody wins the match by catching him finally in Crossroads. And we go to commercial. We come back. We got Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc with Penelope Ford versus the Young Bucks. Awesome. And Butcher and Blade have words. Fascinating. Yeah. They bring up this thing, and I've brought it up about AEW before, because all the regular matches are 20-minute time limits, and the commentators note that we're probably getting close to that 20 minutes. Why not have a clock running down the time of the match in the corner, like every other sport? Then they can really start using that clock. Then they can do things like keep records of who's got the fastest pins. And they can do a thing of like, oh, you know, I've noticed around the 5-minute mark, so-and-so and so. It just gives you more to use. Put the fucking clock at the time of the match running down in the corner, AEW. The Young Bucks win and really do a great exhibition of a Young Bucks match. And Kip Sabian and Jimmy Havoc do a really good job. Then all hell breaks loose. Butcher and Blade are attacking, and FTR show up. Like during the match that happened as well, where Butcher and Blade looked like they were going to kind of jump somebody, and FTR came up. And so now there's this weird thing where everybody's kind of fighting everybody. But at the end of the day, FTR and Bucks clean house of Kip Sabian, Jimmy Havoc, Butcher and Blade. And so, again, more teasing about this match that's going to happen, that FTR says, we're not here to wrestle the Young Bucks. We're here to, like, win and make money and stuff. But clearly, this is a match that's going to happen at some point. A promo, let's see. It's Brian Cage and Taz, and it's awkward. I'll say that Brian Cage talked and it didn't really feel punctuated, but I love that Brian Cage spoke. I love that there's a lot of energy in what they're saying. I like that their promo feels dangerous and spontaneous. And so you're going to get awkward, and awkward happens here, but I love the idea of the promo and I love them together. Not everything's going to work, but that doesn't mean that you don't continue to do it. That's what I like about AEW. It's what I like about Taz, frankly. I think he's at the top of his game, both on commentary and as the guy who's helping Brian Cage. Go to commercial. And I write down here, are we doing a tag match back to back? I go, there's an old wrestling thing where you don't do that. And it's the problem is you get same, but it is what it is. Moxley gives a promo and it's very good. And I like that Moxley's putting over this, like, I am a miserable fucking dude. I'm going to kick your ass. And then they set up next week. They're setting up next week for Dynamite. Sammy Guevara versus Matt Hardy. We've had some teases between the two of them and some contact. Really great. Brody Lee and Colt Cabana. So apparently the paperwork they gave him was, I signed us up for this tag match against Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss, who they've put together recently as a tag team at AEW and gave them a big win on Dark. That's interesting. A lumberjack match between Luchasaurus and Wardlow. Here we go, right? Connecting the dots. FTR is going to take on the Natural Nightmares, who lost earlier. So that's, but they got a tag team title shot. So now FTR is going to show that they can go over them too, I suppose. And Moxley's going to be in a match. Jesus, I've already set up the card for fucking next week. Great. They talk about Spider Fest matches that are going to happen. And again, they're getting all of this work done, not at the very end, but before the main event, which people will presumably want to see, right? Then we go to Big Swole. Okay, we're going to get the payoff on that. What's happening? Britt Baker's in a dumpster. She vows revenge. Predictable, but was it hilarious? Nope. I didn't think it worked, but they continue to try to give with Britt Baker and give her stuff to do, which I really like. Matt Hardy at the announce table for this match. And then I've already talked about the Les Sex Gods against Best Friends, so I don't need to go over that again. Again, on a nuts and bolts scale, Dynamite gets better and better and better. They're connecting themselves with AEW Dark. They're having just little things like, the Dark Order tag team having a run-in with Private Party, so that then their match later doesn't feel out of thin air. It's just small stuff like that, and they're doing this without authority figures coming to the ring and making matches on the microphone. It feels like a world where the wrestlers are fighting and scrapping amongst themselves to make things happen, and I think that's really great. And I won't belabor my points that I made about Chris Jericho and to a lesser extent Chuck Taylor. I just hope that maybe this will start a discussion, and let's fucking be honest. This isn't about me wanting to tear down anything. On the contrary, I think AEW is great and has the potential to be better. And the guys there, while they're... It's not just a thing where I'm like, they need to be grateful that AEW's around, but be grateful that AEW's around and fucking act like it and take more and more steps. I keep saying AEW in different ways needs to take the lead in the industry, and they need to be seen that way. And that includes the wrestlers themselves. All right. This has been Stephen Platinum, your friend in wrestling. And this has been Platinum versus AEW Dynamite.